Legend of Total War here, and today we're doing another tier list using Tier Maker, this time covering some of the races of Regiments of Renown for Total War Warhammer. Now, doing every single race as Regiment of Renown was originally the plan, but it was going to be such a massive long video that would have ended up being like 4 or 5 hours, so I need to break it down into different groups. What we're going to be doing today is the base Game 1 races, so the Empire, Dwarfs, Greenskins, and Vampire counts. So that'll also include DLC that they may have received over Game 1 and Game 2. But yeah, we're just covering the Empire, Dwarfs, Greenskin, and Vampire counts Regiment of Renown. Even then, this video is probably going to be like an hour long. And the way we're going to rank them is not based on whether or not the Regiment of Renown is good, because really, all Regiment of Renown from a campaign perspective is useful in some situations. But really, we're going to be comparing them to how good they are to their original counterpart, because all Regiment of Renown are based off an original existing unit, and whether or not their abilities or stats are significant improvements over those originals. But before we get into that tier list, I do need to let you guys know that this video here is sponsored by Manscaped. Now, I can't think of a company that's been blessed, or cursed, by Slaanesh more than Manscaped. Now, I've spoken to you guys in the past about, you know, the various different razors, the men's care product, but today we're going to be talking about the boxers. Now, I've actually been wearing Manscaped underwear for more than a year, and over time, my underwear drawer is just almost entirely become Manscaped products. I find that they are more comfortable and, more importantly, more durable than my other underwear, which is why the other ones are basically just rags now, just being thrown out. The Manscaped underwear is actually standing the test of time and my rancid sack. So if you're looking for a pair of underwear that can handle the most rancid of flatulence, look no further than Manscaped products. Super comfortable, super durable, make your junk look good. Do you need anything else from underwear? If not, check out the link in the description below and in the comments and get 20% off the product and free international shipping. Big thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. Okay, so let's get on to the actual tier list now. So what we're going to be covering here is the Empire, Dwarves, the Greenskins, and the Vampire count Regiment of Renown. I've got Warhammer 2 booted up so we can go through the custom battle stuff to go through what the differences are between the original and the Regiment of Renown. So we'll start with the Empire units and decide where they're going to place. So when placing a unit, it really does come down to not whether the unit itself is good, but how good it is compared to the original. So for example, if the original is S tier and the Regiment of Renown variant isn't that much better, then it won't end up in essentially S tier in this. It really comes down to how much better is the Regiment of Renown to their original counterpart. Okay, so let's start with the Death Jacks over here. What do they do? So we firstly get that, and then also what their Regiment of Renown counterpart is, the Archers. So what is the difference here? If you really want to look at the actual stat differences, most of the times the Regiment of Renown has pretty much identical stats, but you want to give it the same amount of experience, right? But main thing you're looking for here is what abilities they provide. So the Death Jacks, they provide Stalk and Snipe. Now, that's alright, I suppose. They're not really great for using that due to their low range. So it's definitely still an upgrade over the original. So I'm going to put that over on slightly better than original. Just because these units aren't really ideal for, you know, stalking and sniping. Just because of their low range and low combat stats and kind of low speed, relatively speaking. You know, these are no way stalkers. But, you know, having access to stalk can be very useful in some occasions. Alright, so after that, what is next? We're dealing with the White Wolves. Okay, so White Wolves, they are here, and they're a Huntsman counterpart. So, in terms of combat stats, the White Wolves are actually significantly better in melee than regular Huntsmen. They've also got the Encourage ability, which will provide leadership in a small area around it, and they're also immune to psychology. So the White Wolves, in terms of their missile capabilities, if you ever look here, it says it's -1, but it's usually due to reload time. Let me just have a quick look. Yeah, they've just got a slightly faster reload time than regular Huntsmen. So with a missile unit like this, is giving them extra melee stats actually useful? It would only ever come in handy if you ran out of ammunition completely. Aside from that, having those extra stats is actually a detriment because they're valued higher in auto-resolve or in the balance of power, so losing them would be more devastating to your army losses, I suppose, than regular huntsmen. So the White Wolves can actually be a double-edged sword. It's very, very rare that you would actually want to make use of those extra combat stats, and so having them with those extra combat stats can inflate your balance of power more than it's actually providing. So yeah, a bit of a weird one there. Not all stats are good to increase with all units. Some stats are actually bad. So when it comes down to the White Wolves, I'm actually going to put this unit as worse than the original because it just doesn't need melee combat stats. It's an archer unit. It's no better of an archer unit than the other one, but having combat stats that don't exactly make it good in melee, just not quite as crap. This one here can actually be detrimental to your army. Now, in an emergency situation, I'll still recruit them, but the White Wolves are actually a terrible regiment of renown. Okay, then we're going to use the, I think that's called the Black Lions. So let's have a look at them. So this one here is a hybrid regiment of renown. It is a war wagon and also a Hellblaster volley gun. So we kind of need to look at both the war wagon and the Hellblaster volley gun. Now it is primarily it's basically a mobile version of the Hellblaster volley gun, right? So in terms of damage output, it actually has significantly less than a regular Hellblaster volley gun. So if you have a look, so their ammunition is 16 compared to 22. They've got less range, 250 range compared to 290 range. They do have more damage output, but that's probably due to firing rate. See, giving extra experience doesn't increase the damage, just the firing rate. So yeah, I imagine that's the case. That's 7 seconds with that one. And so yeah, 7.4, right? So is this a good regiment of renown? Yes, it is, because having a mobile artillery piece that can dish out that much damage, even at reduced range, can be really useful. You can actually skirmish with this unit. So the fact that it has lower range or it has lower ammunition doesn't really matter in terms of balance of power, because even at 6 fewer ammunition, this unit here can still punch so far above its pay grade just because of how much fucking damage it can dish out in a short amount of time. So having a mobile version of a Hellblaster volley gun is, I would say, better than the original. I wouldn't say it's far superior than the original, just because of I guess the stat rebalancing to sort of not make it too overpowered. If all of its stats were exactly the same as Hellblaster volley gun, it would be quite overpowered. But in its current state, it is still a very good regiment of renown. Then we've got the Sigmar Sons. All right, so these ones here, they're exactly the same as an Empire Swordsman. They're just unbreakable. That is better than the original for sure. Having a unit that holds the line for a really long time is very useful for the Empire, considering how much of your army is probably going to be missile and artillery based. Then there's the Tattersalls. We don't need to go into custom battle for every single one of these, because some of them have very simple upgrades that I can remember. I can't remember every single thing. But yeah, the Tattersalls, the difference between them and the regular Flagellants is just that these guys here have more models in them. So if we just briefly have a quick look. So if we go to the Tattersalls, 120 men in Zon Ultra unit scale as opposed to 160. That's about it. If we have a look at actual combat stats, it is, yeah, pretty much identical. Having 10 extra leadership doesn't make any difference. They're unbreakable. So yeah, it's just about having more troops, which, getting more troops is definitely an upgrade. So I'm going to put that one as better than original. Definitely not far superior, but yeah, just having more troops is good. Okay, then we've got the what's this? The Sterling's Revenge. What do they provide over regular Free Company militia? So, if we have a look here, they just have immunity to psychology and stalk. Alright, now, because this is a relatively fast unit that can fire while moving, not in a 360-degree range, that's okay, but at short range definitely hurts them in terms of having Stalk. Similar to the Archers, it definitely is an upgrade for sure, because sometimes you just want to be able to hide certain units, and sometimes there just won't be forests to put them in, so having a stalking unit can be really handy. So in that regard, I'm going to put this as slightly better than the original. Having immunity to psychology is useful, but I don't weight it that highly. It really depends on what you're going up against. Okay, then we've got the Silver Bullets. Is that what they're called? Yeah, Silver Bullets. So, which is a Regiment of Renown version of the Handgunners. These guys here have Stalk and magical attack, and also 5 extra range, which is definitely handy. So this is a pretty significant upgrade, but you got to be careful with the Silver Bullets because sometimes getting magical attacks, at least in Warhammer 2, can be detrimental. So, for example, if you're going up against Luther Harkon, you would really not want to bring magical weapons. But in Warhammer 3, it'll be fine because it'll be spell resistance. So, this will be a much better unit in Warhammer 3. But yeah, having extra range is definitely good. I think the extra damage is just because of the it's just fire rate. They should have the same damage output. And Stalk is definitely handy. Having the 3 Regiment of Renown that can stalk, go and like do a bit of flanking maneuvers, can be very useful for your army. So we will put this one here as better than the original, because magic bullets can be very helpful. Okay, then we've got the Reichsguard one, which is Zintler's Reichsguard. So what's the difference between them and the original? In terms of combat stats, they're exactly the same. This one here has got Vanguard deployment and immune to psychology. For a Regiment of Renown unit, that is not very helpful at all, because they've got very high leadership to begin with. Like, don't get me wrong, immunity to psychology helps a little bit, but all it does is make you immune to the fear and terror effects, which these guys naturally wouldn't hurt them that much in the first place due to their extremely high leadership. So that would only really help when this unit is fighting something that's scary and is already obliterated, at which point, who cares if it routs at 10 troops instead of 12 sort of thing remaining. And then Vanguard deployment, that can definitely help. It's definitely an upgrade, but it's such a minute upgrade that for the extra added cost, I've got to say it's pretty much identical to the original. It's given upgrades that it just doesn't really benefit that much from. Okay, then we go to the Royal Altdorf Griffites, the Demogryph Knights. These are Demogryph Knights with halberds. Having a look at the difference between these two, what do we get? So in terms of combat stats, they're completely identical, except the Royal Altdorf Griffites have Cause Terror. Now, I don't really value Terror that much if you're playing on higher difficulty, because it's very hard to get the AI to actually get terrified unless you're going up against really low tier stuff, because the way that Terror works is that it only can have a chance of triggering when the unit is fairly low in leadership in the first place, which if you're playing on very hard battle difficulty, they get a +10 leadership. Most units basically just fight to the death, which is why I rely very heavily on army losses, because that +10 leadership does not do much for a -120 leadership, right? So this here will be useful in like normal battle difficulty, and I guess multiplayer, which this tier list is not about at all. In terms of campaign play though, I think that having Terror just isn't really that helpful if that's the only thing it's got. So it's definitely not a downgrade. So it's just going to be same as original. It's just not enough of an upgrade for it to be worth any higher on this tier list. Okay, then we've got the Hammer of the Witches. This is actually a really good Regiment of Renown. If we have a look at it, there are lots of ways in which it's upgraded over the regular cannons. So it has magical attacks. It has 8 extra ammunition. It has a pretty significant boost to missile strength, and I think that's down to actual damage, not just firing rate. So 15.4 seconds fire rate compared to 16.3, but yeah, it definitely has a higher damage output. So it's got more ammunition, more damage, and the damage is magical. So this will be particularly useful if you go up against something with lots of physical resistance. So these will be very helpful in Warhammer 3, dealing with demons, absolutely. So this is a significant upgrade. So I'm going to say the Hammer of the Witches is far superior to the original. Yeah, having extra ammo as well. Really good for sieges. Just all-round upgrades. So really, really good campaign, Regiment of Renown, Hammer of the Witches. Okay. Then we've got the Sunmaker. So this one's an interesting one because its utility is a bit weird. It can be a double-edged sword, right? So at a glance... right, it looks like it has significantly less ammunition than the Hailstorm Rocket Battery, but it actually doesn't. It does actually have more ammunition, but only slightly, because the way of how it's sort of calculated. What the ammunition really means is how many volleys that the unit has in total, right? But the thing is, the Sunmaker will shoot 3 times as many rockets as a regular Hailstorm Rocket Battery, so you need to take its ammunition and, well, take this one's ammunition and multiply it by 3. Because if you ever look here, see how it says shots per volley 9? And this one here, shots per volley 3. So, it shoots 3 times as much. But each shot, each volley, is going to be worth just 1 ammunition. So you multiply that by 3, and you've got 24. So it's got slightly more ammunition than a regular Hailstorm Rocket Battery. And it's got flaming attacks, which... isn't really that useful because there's not that many units that you're going to hit with this that's going to be weak against fire. A lot of the units in the game that are weak against fire are things that are single entities, and this is not good against that. So, for example, if you're going up against Vargulfs or Terrorgeist or something like that, generally speaking, you don't want to be using this against it because it's just not going to hit it. This is an anti-infantry unit, so the fact that it's got flaming attacks is kind of useless, especially if you're going up against Dwarfs and they're bringing lots of Iron Breakers, or if you're going up... sorry, not Iron Breakers, Iron Drakes, or if you're going up against High Elves. High Elves and Dwarves have a lot of fire resistance, and this is not the unit to bring with it. Now, in terms of how this unit is better than the original Hailstorm Rocket Battery, it comes down to it can fire off its volleys really quickly. So if you just need to dish out damage really quickly, the Sunmaker is really good. However, in terms of that being a double-edged sword, if you fire too much into an already obliterated unit and just waste its ammunition, you could end up hurting yourself more than helping. So you really need to make sure that whatever you're shooting into is very clumped up. Like, for example, don't shoot just an isolated unit of zombies with this. What a waste of ammunition. So you really need to make sure, if you're going to use this, that they've got a big cluster of infantry. Otherwise, you're actually better off not shooting it at all. It's definitely an upgrade over the... original Hailstorm Rocket Batteries, but you have to be careful when using it. I'm going to put it here with just think of it as an asterisk being like, it can be worse the original if you use it badly, if you waste its ammunition. So you've got to be very careful with it. Because, yeah, if you just waste all of its ammo, then it'll actually hurt your battle overall progress. Okay, then we've got the Luminar Temple the Temple of Luminar. In terms of how it's upgraded over the original, it has Encourage, which is useful to keeping it behind infantry units. That's okay. And also has Net of Amatok. This is the real benefit over the original. It also has higher missile strength, but that's probably just reload time. Generally speaking, unless it's a significant boost, like with the Hammer of the Witches, it's usually just a slight reload time boost. So, is the Net of Amatok and the Encourage worth it? Absolutely. Encourage probably not that big of a deal, because you'll probably have some kind of heroes near them anyway, and only one Encourage can be active at a time. But having certain units getting bound without costing Winds of Magic is really helpful. So I'm going to put this one as better than the original. Definitely not far superior, but yeah, getting a Net of Amatok down on like a Vargulf or something, or Manfred von Carstein if he's charging at you, that can be really helpful. Okay, then that's it for the Empire. Now we move on to the Dwarfs. Okay. So first up is the Ekrand Miners. What is their special ability for a Regiment of Renown? If we have a look at this, they provide 2 extra ammunition with their blasting charges. Yeah, that's an upgrade. The blasting charges are pretty good, but it's nothing spectacular. So that is a slightly better than the original. Then we've got, which one are these called? The Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. So looking at these ones here, I think they're anti-infantry and flaming attack. Now, flaming attack can be a double-edged sword. You know, it only matters having flaming attacks whether you're going up against something with fire resistance or not, or fire weakness. If you're going up against something that doesn't have weakness to fire, it doesn't do additional damage. So there's very few units in the game that actually have weakness to fire. So a lot of the time that just won't be active. But getting a slight bonus to bonus versus infantry, that's definitely very helpful, considering that there's pretty much no other Dwarfen unit. There's no other Dwarfen unit that has bonus versus infantry. So that's pretty much the only one that they've got. So in terms of that, it is slightly better than the original, because anti-infantry is definitely good. Alright, then we've got the Grumbling Guard, which is a Longbeard Great Weapon variant. Got to put up the maximum experience to make it a fair comparison. In terms of stats, they're exactly the same. But it's got this ability here called the Old Grumblers, which is an ability that you have to activate, which restores vigor. Which, you know, that's pretty good. Making your units less tired is definitely helpful, but that's fairly minor in the grand scheme of things, especially since you have to, it doesn't do it automatically. You have to go in and click it, and if you're in a particularly micro-intensive battle, which generally speaking dwarves are not, it's not that helpful. So it's definitely a upgrade, but it's really, really minor, so I'm going to put that as slightly better than the original. Okay, then we've got the Dragonblack Slayers. So this one's an interesting one. Okay. You really got to look at this and see what it does. So we've got regular Slayers, right? Then Dragonblack Slayers. In terms of stats, they're exactly the same. This one here has got physical resistance, essentially giving it 20% ward save, so that's good. And then the other thing they have is this one, Power of the Dragonback. So while it's in melee, it gets 20% flame resistance and imbues flammable. So 20% weakness to fire and reduces their speed. Now, it itself doesn't have flame attack, so it doesn't really benefit from this. So this unit here is best used in combination with blasting charges, I guess, because they all have flaming attack, or using the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. So what you want to do, if you really want to make use of it, is use the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass as the anvil, and the Dragonback Slayers as the hammer, and then as soon as the Dragonback Slayers go into melee with whatever it goes up against, this one here will dish out 20% extra damage. So these two here work amazingly well as a team. Well, not amazingly well. They work better as a team as opposed to by itself. Apart from that, it's just a regular Slayer unit with, you know, essentially 20% ward save. So that's definitely an upgrade. And depending on how you use it, can be a quite significant one. So I'm going to say that one's better than the original. Then we've got the, where is it? The Peakgate Guard, which is a hammerer unit. Having a look at what it provides. So in terms of stats, it's exactly the same. This one here has got magical attacks and also armor sundering. Now, considering this unit here already does like tons of armor piercing, getting rid of armor is only useful if other things are fighting it, like that don't have that much armor piercing. Now, not every bit of its weapon strength is armor piercing, so it will increase its base weapon damage by a little bit. And then the other thing it has is the immune to psychology. So magical attacks can definitely be helpful. So this is definitely better than the original, but I'd say it's only slightly better. It's not like it's a big deal. It really does depend on how you use it, and even if used perfectly, it's not going to be that much better. Okay, then we've got the Ironbreaker variant, the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers. So, having a look at the difference here, the Norgrimling Ironbreakers have 20 extra troops. So basically they go up a tier of unit scale, so it's just more of them. They've also got immune to psychology, Vanguard deployment, and that's it. Having more Ironbreakers basically just means they're just going to be better at holding the line. They've also got more missile strength. Maybe it says fire rate, so 6.3 compared to, yeah, 6.7. So yeah, it's just extra fire rate. So it really just comes down to just having a bigger unit of Ironbreakers, and that's definitely good, because Ironbreakers, their job is to hold the line, and having more of them just means that they'll hold the line for longer. So I'm going to put that as better than, I'm going to put it better than the original, because Ironbreakers are really good units in the first place, and having more of them, that's just good. Okay, so then we move on to the Ulfarz Raiders, which is a Ranger with Great Weapon variant. So, what are the differences between these two units? In terms of stats, pretty much identical. This one has probably higher firing rate. The big difference here is this ability, marked by Ulfarz, which is an ability that you have to activate. It's a hex that you can apply on one unit at a time. Reduces the armor, missile resistance, and missile parry with shield. So, this is particularly useful if you're about to focus fire on specifically something that's either got a lot of missile resistance or a shield. You pop this down before your guns or whatever shoot into it. But it doesn't have... Oh, it's got pretty decent range. You got 150 range. So yeah, if anything's coming in range of your Thunderers, you pop this down first. That can be quite helpful. But that's basically all that it does. Still good ability, but you've got to keep an eye on it. So with that one there, I'm going to say that that is better than the original. Just because of that ability. But if you forget about it, then it might as well just be put as the same as the original. So you actually have to go and actively use that ability. So that'll, you know, you have to do some micro for that, which for dwarf players can be almost intolerable. I'm just kidding. But anyway. And then, oh, hang on. What's next? We've got the Scolder Guard. Alright, the Scolder Guard. This is an interesting one, because this one is kind of a variant of the regular Iron Drake, right? But it shoots steam instead of fire. Okay, so it does less damage, but it kind of does explosive damage. It has physical resistance as well. So kind of like, yeah, it's essentially got ward save, 20% ward save, so that's good. But this is a unit that you don't really want taking damage in the first place. So it's good if it's getting shot at, having that extra physical resistance. It'll just take less damage. In terms of what it can actually do, it's got slightly higher range than regular Iron Drakes. But its missile strength is half as much, right? But it really comes down to this. The Iron Drakes are particularly good against like low armored infantry. And this one here, because of all of its armor piercing, like if you're going up against Black Orcs or something like that, this is where this one's going to come in. So this is more of a higher tier killer than regular Iron Drakes. But in terms of its actual utility, it is slightly better than the original. In terms of killing potential, both the Iron Drakes and the Scolder Guard are going to get very similar amount of kills, depending on what you're shooting at. But still a very good unit. But only slightly better than the original, I think. Then we've got the Skyhammer. So, this one here is a Gyro Bomber variant. In terms of what it does have slightly higher stats. Just slightly two more leadership, which that doesn't really matter at all for a missile unit, essentially. And its missile strength, if we have a look at it, shots per volley 8, reload time 3.5. Yeah, it's just got higher reload time, that's basically it. And if you have a look at the bombs being dropped, the Gyro Bomber has 11, the Skyhammer has got 5. So it's actually got less drops. Well, hang on, it's got less drops than it does, but each one of these bombs does significantly more damage. So it does actually have more bombs than the original Gyro Bomber. Because, yeah, this one just drops like 1 bomb. This one will drop like 5 times 5, essentially. But that's its only real utility. So, definitely better than the original, but only by the tiniest of margins. So, it's only slightly better than the original. Okay, then we've got the Goblobbers, which is a Grudge Thrower variant. If we have a look at what they provide, they have more damage output, and it seems to be a bit more than just... Oh, it could just be reload time reductions, but apart from that, it looks exactly the same. With the exception of this. So because they've got, like, goblins attached to the rocks, this is a useful unit to getting enemy units to break. So this is very useful against low leadership units, like Skaven Slaves, Clan Rats, Goblin units, but it's not really going to be helpful against late game stuff. So in the early game, this is fairly useful, but it is barely an upgrade over the original, so I'm going to put it at slightly better. But, you know, shooting it only really matters if you're lowering leadership if A, you're going to break the unit, or B, it has Frenzy and you drop it below 50% so that it loses its Frenzy. Apart from that, you know, dropping these bombs onto Black Orcs and they're still being, like, at 80 leadership isn't really going to make that big of a difference. So you just got to be aware of the special ability of this one can be at least useless sometimes. You know, you got to make sure you hit the right target. Anyway, that's all the dwarf stuff. Now we move on to greenskins. Alright, so... I can just come over here and sort this one out. Okay, so if we look at it, I think the Warlord's Boys is first. Yeah, okay, so this one here is a Night Goblin unit, but not a Fanatic. Alright, so what is the difference between the two? So it's not expendable. It has the exact same combat stats. It has immunity to psychology. Yeah, so it's not affected by fear. Now, for a unit with low leadership, that's actually fairly good. And it has sundered armor. That's fairly useful, especially when using in a group of Night Goblins, because they don't have a whole lot of armor piercing. I'd say that's only a slight upgrade. It's just not that big of a deal, so I'm going to put that as a slight upgrade, but definitely better than nothing. And having them being immune to psychology definitely helps. Now this one here is a Fanatic variant. The 8 Peak Loonies. So this one, if we have a look at it, in terms of stats, it's unbreakable. Okay, that's the big difference here. So it doesn't have expendable and it's unbreakable. In terms of everything else, it's completely the same. For this unit here, this is actually very good. It's still only a slight upgrade over the original, I think. But having... Goblins are just unreliable units in terms of leadership. So having a unit that will just never run away can be very helpful to get, at least to get the other ones out of an area so that they can hit and run later. So I'm going to put that as slightly better than the original. But yeah, those two, nothing particularly special about them. Then we move on to the Black Orc unit, the Crimson Killers. Now this one's interesting. Okay, if we have a look at it, stats seem completely identical to Black Orcs here, right? So it says anti-infantry, but it doesn't actually have an anti-infantry buff, right? Now, if we have a look here, Armed to the Teeth, the big difference here is that these guys do splash attack, right? So they do actually dish out more damage than Black Orcs. Unfortunately, it just doesn't really let you know that in terms of the stats. You've got to read this here. So this is particularly useful when dealing with just huge masses of infantry. They're not going to have any higher chance of hitting or any extra damage, but where these guys here, each individual Black Orc can only hit one individual at a time, these ones here can hit, I don't know exactly how many, but they can just hit more of them because they hit in a splash area of effect. So I wouldn't say that they're massive upgrades over Black Orcs, but it is definitely an upgrade. So I'm going to put that one there as better than the original, because those splash attacks can really make a big difference in terms of overall damage output and a massive infantry slog, which is what the Black Orcs are best dealing with. Okay, then we've got missile units to deal with. We've got the... where is it? The Rusty Arrows, which is a Night Goblin Archer unit, not a Fanatic. So what's its difference? It's not expendable, and it does sundered armor, which that's good considering it doesn't have armor piercing. Doesn't have much, at least. So that is definitely an upgrade. Not very much of an upgrade, though. So it just reduces the armor by 30. That is slightly better than the original. Seems like some of these Greenskin Regiment of Renown are a bit shit. Oh well. Okay, then we've got the Moon Howlers, which is a Wolf Rider variant. What does it do? It's not expendable. It causes fear. It has the exact same stats. Yeah, that's only useful if you're actually going to break a unit and that doesn't have immune to psychology. But apart from that, they are identical. It is definitely an upgrade, for sure. Also, having fear means that they become immune to fear, and because they're a low leadership unit, that can actually be quite helpful in making sure it just doesn't run away straight away from the battle. So I'm going to put that as slightly better than the original, but it's nothing particularly fantastic to, to celebrate. It really is just an emergency unit. Then we've got the Dirkett Squiggs, which is a Night Goblin Squig Hopper unit. So what does it provide? This one here has missile resistance. That is it. How much missile resistance? 25%. In terms of other stats, it looks identical. Just check the armor, web bonus versus infantry. I think it's the same. Yeah. So yeah, just looking at 25% missile resistance. That means it'll take less damage from small arms fire. Because, like, if you get hit by an artillery piece, it doesn't matter if you've got 25% missile resistance. You're still going to die when you're a low hit point unit. So that's not going to protect against artillery. Hence why I said protect against small arm fire. You know, they'll take one additional volley before dying. So still slightly better than the original, but nothing spectacular. Alright, then we've got the Magrubs Menji Marauders, which is Goblin Wolf Rider Archers. So this one here, its main contribution is armor piercing. It's also immune to psychology, and not expendable. So how much armor piercing does it actually do? So 11 overall damage with 10 armor piercing, compared to 11 overall damage with 10 base damage. So yeah, significant amount of increased armor piercing. So this one here, good for taking out armored units. And since it's a essentially a horse archer unit with okay range, having armor piercing is definitely better. But you know, if it's not that big of a deal, because a lot of the time you might be shooting into something like a giant, which doesn't have much armor in the first place. So once again, just slightly better than the original. Don't get me wrong, armor piercing is better. That's why it's not the same as the original, because its overall damage output against some units will be exactly the same. Okay, some of these Greenskin Regiment of Renown are just no better than the original at all. Okay, then we've got the Death Creepers, which is a Forest Goblin Spider Rider unit. So, this one here has regen. Is there anything else? It also stalks. That's about it. I'm sure its firing rate is a little bit higher. Having regeneration is definitely better. And Stalk is definitely good for a cavalry unit like that. So that's probably the best Greenskin, well, one of the best Greenskin ones so far. I'm going to put that as better than the original because, yeah, that way it can take a shot from, take a volley from, like, Quarrels or whatever they're going up against, run away, recover, and then soak up more of that damage. Better for hit and run, especially with the Stalk ability. So, yeah, that is a fairly decent Regiment of Renown. Does require a fair bit of micro, though. But still, that's good. Okay, hang on. What's next? We got heavy cavalry coming in. So that is this one here, the Broken Tusk Mob, which is an Orc Boarboy Biggin. Let's have a look at that by comparison. So in terms of stats, it is reduced in melee attack by 2, but has higher melee defense. It has 15 extra armor. How's its anti-large? 12 bonus versus large. Versus 12, so... Right. And it has encourage. Right, so basically... Look, the thing is, when dealing with cavalry... Melee defense is actually far less valuable than melee attack because this is supposed to be dishing out damage. That's what you want them to do. So that's actually a detriment. Generally speaking, I don't value having high melee defense on cavalry unit because you don't want them holding the line. You want them to get a charge in on something and kill it as quickly as possible. Not hold on for ages. That's not what their job is. Having encourage, so while they're charging around with other Orc Boarboy Biggins or other cavalry units, they're making sure their leadership's holding, which is a fairly high leadership units. This is really not an upgrade, the Broken Tusk Mob. I'm going to put that one, like, that's such a minor upgrade. No, it's a side grade, basically. That is the same as the original, essentially. That's just not a good Regiment of Renown at all. It'd be so difficult to really get any serious value out of that compared to the original. Like, they're going to perform identically. If anything, the regular Orc Boy Biggins are going to inflict more damage. So, even if it is only slightly. But yeah, that's just a side grade. Definitely not worse than the original. Okay, then we've got that unit over there. Okay, so that is the Teeth Robbers, Goblin Wolf Chariots. God, Greenskin have some shit Regiment of Renown. Okay, this one here, its main benefit is Vanguard deploy. Apart from that, exactly the same. So if we have a look at this, 4.2 compared to 4.4. Yeah, it's just faster reload rate. Let me just check the other damages though. 19.3. Yeah, it's the same damage, it's just faster reload time. So yeah, the only advantage this one here has is Vanguard deploy. Like, that's definitely good, but it's just such a slight upgrade. Just so very, very slight. I I don't know whether... Look, I'm going to put it as slightly better than the original, because Vanguard deploy can be very helpful. But for a very fast unit, it could have gotten to whatever position it needed to be in quite quickly anyway. But yeah, that's a sort of like a borderline between same as the original and slightly better. It's like such a minuscule improvement. Okay, then we've got an artillery one over here. They've got a lot of Regiment of Renown, the Greenskins. Just a lot of it's absolute garbage. Okay, so the Hammer of Gawk. This one here is very similar to the Goblobbers from the Greenskins. Sorry, from the Dwarfs. Except this one here provides the Blinded. So it reduces their accuracy, melee attack, and melee defense. So this is actually quite useful to hit into something that's already in melee with your other troops. So that's actually fairly good, but you got to watch out for hitting your own troops, because it's not exactly accurate. I don't think you can inflict the Blinded on your own troops, but you can still definitely hit your own troops. In terms of overall stats, though, I think it's just got higher reload time, as in it reloads a bit faster. So where we're going to put that one is, I'm going to put that at better than the original, but you just got to be careful with it, because obviously you don't want to hit your own troops. Then we've got the Arachna Queen. Where is that? Under monsters. Yeah, the Arachna Queen. So how does it vary from its original? In terms of stats, I think it just a reload rate a little bit faster. Exact same stats otherwise. But it has this ability here, Maternal Instincts, which is 5 summons of spider hatchlings. This is actually really good because you can use the Maternal Instinct as suicide units, essentially, to soak up damage. Like if you're going up against dwarves and they've got loads of blasting charges, you send a Maternal Instinct in, and it just wastes it, essentially. So these are throwaway units that you can keep using between each battle, 5 times. That's actually a big upgrade, that ability there. And if you're playing as Grom the Paunch, you can get all of your Arachnaroks with that ability with some of your cooking. But that ability alone, I think, puts it under better than the original, but definitely not far superior than the original. But it is a good ability. It really does depend on how you use them. Also, those spider hatchlings can be quite useful for running down broken units. And they last a good while as well. Okay, then we've got the Snotlink Pump Wagon. So this is Warden on the Paunch DLC, Regiment of Renown now. Where is that one? Where are you? Snotlink Pump Wagon. Here it is. Okay, so this is just a regular Snotlink Pump Wagon. Looking at the variant there. It has this ability here. Giant Exploding Spores. So, causes moderate damage, large area of effect. Yeah, it basically just does a little bit of extra damage, and can be a bit disruptive. Which is pretty good for essentially a chariot unit, because this ability, what you can use it for, is charging in, explodes, which moves all the infantry out of the way, allowing you to get away a lot easier. So this one actually has quite a bit of utility. So that ability there puts it as better than the original. Then the next thing was... What was coming next? Okay, the River Troll Hags. Okay, so that is the Swamp Things, which are River Trolls. Alright, so how do they differ? They actually have less melee attack than the original River Troll by 1. They have Terror, and that's it. Right. It just has lower stats. It's just, yeah, it having Terror is not that big of a deal at all. That's just a nothing Regiment of Renown. It's basically identical. Okay, then we've got the biggin. Okay, so this is a rogue idol. So, what does this one do? It's got identical stats, apart from it's got an additional utility. So the ammunition, this is an artillery piece as well. So it's got 10 shots to begin with. These can do a ton of damage, this stuff here. And you can regenerate your ammunition by doing a little bit of damage to yourself. This unit here, the biggin, is fucking amazing. Far superior to the original. It can dish out so much extra damage. Even though its melee combat stats are identical, that extra 10 shots can get hundreds of kills per battle, and if you want to use it, hurt itself to keep getting more ammo, you can get tons of extra ammo. If I recall, I think you get like 3 additional shots at a cost of 700 health, which means as long as it's alive, you can keep doing it over and over again. You can get so much ammo out of this one here, especially useful during a siege. Really, really good Regiment of Renown, that one. You can squeeze a lot of value out of it. Really, really good Regiment of Renown. And that's all the Greenskin ones. So they've got mostly trash Regiment of Renown and one absolutely fantastic Regiment of Renown. Okay, now we move on to the Vampire accounts, which their ones are gonna not be amazing because they haven't had any DLC since Warhammer 1. Alright, starting with, what are they called? The Tithe? Yeah, the Tithe. Okay, so this zombie unit here, it just has a higher entity number. So it's got 200 entity units. I think that might actually be the highest number of units you can get in a single unit in the game. It's higher than Skaven Slaves. But in terms of combat, oh no, it does have higher combat stats as well. They have 15 armor as well. And they are 2 faster. They've got 2 extra speed. And they've got physical resistance, 15%. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's not just an extra number of entities. They're actually more durable as well. And faster, which is good for them to get into position. And some extra armor. So yeah, they're not only higher health, but their health is worth more. So this is, I'm going to put that as better than the original. Because that's a pretty good upgrade compared to the other ones that increased the entity ones. That is better. Then we've got the skeleton variant, which if we have a look at them, the Konigstein Stalkers, what do? So they're just regular skeleton warriors. All right, so these ones here have 40 extra armor and poison attack, which is pretty good. Their main thing is to go into melee, so you want to. Poison's not bad. It reduces the amount of damage that they're doing to you. So they will hold a lot longer. 40 extra armor is good, unless they're going up against a lot of armor piercing. So it's better. It's better. I wouldn't say it's massively superior. Slightly better than the original, for sure. Alright, then we've got the Crypt Ghouls. So if we have a look at them, how do they differ from the Regiment of Renown? So this one's called the Feasters in the Dark. Alright, so they've got 4 additional speed, they've got Vanguard deployment, and they've got Stalk. That's pretty useful, having this one go around the back of enemy armies. Extra speed is really helpful. That's pretty damn quick for an infantry unit. Yeah, I'd say that one there, just because of Stalk alone, is better than the original. And having them be quick as well, that's quite useful. Yeah, nothing spectacular about them, but it's a good unit. Okay, then we've got the Graveguard variant. Which is just regular Graveguard, not great weapons. So, what's the difference between these two? Alright, in terms of stats, they're identical. This one here has got Expert Charge Defense. Right, what else? That's it. Oh, no, sorry. It's also got regeneration. Right. So, yeah, regeneration. That is actually pretty good. If it was just charge defense, I would have been like, that's exactly the same. But, yeah, being able to passively regenerate is going to be really helpful for it. Especially considering you can revive entities as the vampire accounts using Curse of the Undeath or various other ways that the vampire accounts restore their dead units. And having regeneration active while that's going on will revive more entities. Yeah, expert charge defense. That's like good, but it's nothing amazing. But yeah, it all really comes down to the regeneration there. I'm going to put that as better than the original, for sure. Getting more hit points out of them is very good, without having to waste more magic. Alright, and then we've got the Varex Reavers, which are Lancers and Barding, variant of the Black Knights. Alright, let's see. What's the difference here? Regeneration. That's about it. Yep. Well, regeneration is definitely good. It means you don't have to waste invocations of Nehek on it. But there's nothing really else to talk about. It'll have the exact same utility. It'll just be a bit more durable over a longer course in the battle. So, yep, I'm going to put that as slightly better than the original, but there's nothing else fantastic about that. Then we got the Hex Race, right? Sorry, Hex Race, the Chillgeist. So, let's have a look at the difference here. In terms of combat stats, it has higher melee defense and higher weapon strength. That's good. Interesting. Regular Hex Race dish out fire damage. The Chillgeists do not. Now, the funny thing here is that I would actually value that higher, the fact that it doesn't have fire attacks, because, as I've said before, there are more units in the game that have resistance to fire than weakness to fire, right? So, the fact that it loses its fire attack, I'm actually fine with. Then, it also has this ability down here, which... hang on. Oh, whoops. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. Okay, it also has the Chilling Aura. So, it's already a very quick unit, but when it gets close to a unit, reducing its speed by 35% will allow it to catch units that are even faster than 94. So, you know, having slightly higher combat stats is definitely good. Dropping the fire attack, I'm totally fine with that. I think it's got the same physical resistance, 75%. Yeah. And, yeah, it's just, it can catch faster units. That's about it. It's still good. I'm going to put that as better than the original. Nothing spectacular, doesn't belong up here. And then we've got the Claw of Nagash. We're almost done. Claw of Nagash, which is a Mortise Engine. Now, Mortise Engines are excellent units, but how does the Claw of Nagash differ? So in terms of combat stats, it's exactly the same. It does have magic resistance, which will become spell resistance. But that's good. We don't want to be hit by spells or anything like that, because they can be vulnerable to that kind of stuff, because they're fairly large. And it also has the Chilling Aura. Now, with the Mortise Engine, because it'll stay near infantry and isn't particularly a quick unit, the main benefit for this is to stop units running away quickly. I think the Chilling Aura on a Mortise Engine is not really that valuable, because its job is not to run down units. It'll slow down infantry units that are routing, because its speed is not terrible. I think it really just comes down to having that extra magic resistance. But apart from that, the Claw of Nagash, I can't really see any way that it's significantly better than Mortise Engine. It's got the same abilities that really matter. Because Mortise Engine is an amazing unit. Like, I think I put it under S tier, right? But in terms of everything else here, it's got exactly the same utility, and you're probably going to get the same results out of it. So I'm actually going to say it's only slightly better than the original. Almost borderline, just same as the original. Just not that big of it. It's basically just an emergency unit. Like, still a great unit on its own, just because Mortise Engines on their own are great. There's just not an upgrade over the original Mortise Engine. Okay, then we've got the Dire Pack. So, how is it better than regular Direwolves? In terms of stats, it's exactly the same. It really comes down to it's got bonus versus large. So 14 bonus versus large. Problem is, though, that Direwolves in general are best used to run down routing units, because they're very squishy units. Sending them up against anything that is still of reasonable leadership is a good way to get these things killed. And the same thing will apply with the Dire Pack. Now, setting this up against Cavalry, the only unit that it would really want to go up against are things like Outriders and Pistoliers, which is definitely good, because I think they've got like 1 additional speed over it. But in terms of that's its only real utility. Because bonus versus large is good, but there's so many units that it can go up against and still lose. Like, if it goes up against an Empire Knight, it'll still lose. If it goes up against Reichsguard, it'll lose. It'll lose less badly than regular Direwolves. So I'm going to put that as slightly better than the original. Main thing that you want to use that for is light, fast cavalry. Apart from that, I wouldn't use it up against anything particularly large, even though it's got bonus versus large. Because it'll still just lose. Alright, and then we've got the Devils of Schwarzhafen. So, let's have a look at how these differ. We've got exact same stats. It causes terror, which I don't value very highly. Terror for a flying unit is not too bad, though. As Vanguard deployment. That's it. Terror and Vanguard deployment. Both of them have Frenzy. Yeah, I don't value that much at all. That is same as the original as far as I'm concerned. Like, Terror is better than nothing, but I don't think it's enough of an upgrade to even go into slightly better than the original. You're going to get the exact same utility with this as you will with regular Vargeists, which Vargeists are pretty good units as well. So I would put it in the border between slightly better and same as the original, but I think the utility is pretty much the same. Anyway, that's the tier list there for the base Game 1 races for the Regiment of Renown. So I intend to do probably 4 videos on Regiment of Renown, if this is the kind of format that you guys like for them. You know, comparing them to their originals. Let me know in the comments below what you like and dislike about this format, because we can tweak it if you don't like it, that is. But yeah, appreciate you guys watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed. Hope this has been somewhat helpful for you. And don't forget to check out Manscaped, link in the description and the comments below. Appreciate you, and we'll see you next time, fuckers. Bye.